Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. I can see him starting to scroll up the screen already. See, Will's check is the first one, it looks like, from Cheshire, Massachusetts. Welcome to the number 120 Shop Talk. And got a few little housekeeping things. The subscriber count is at 93,785. It's just like Heinz ketchup. It's making me wait. Do you remember that commercial years ago? Heinz ketchup. It makes you wait or something like that. It's making me wait. Well, that's kind of the way this is. My son, he just keeps rubbing it in my face, even though I told him ahead of time that he was going to be passing me up really fast because I tried to talk him into it, doing a channel years ago even, but homestead horsemanship type thing, because of the animals and stuff. I said your channel will grow way faster than mine, and you'll be making more money than me, etc., and have more subscribers, etc. He's passed the 50,000 subscriber mark already, and he's already making more revenue than I'm making. So I knew that would happen. And I'm not a bit jealous. I'm just happy for him. I'm really glad that it's working out for him. My projects that I've got going on now are kind of homestead related. And as you've heard, last Friday, I announced that I was retiring from working on instruments for people. And if you stop and think about it, for me at least, this is the first time in my life where I haven't owed somebody something. And still, technically, I do still, because that guitar up there is still a customer's, and I've got one more on the shelf. So I've still got two more that I owe to somebody. But really, after those two are done, I don't owe anybody anything. And, it's going to be a really cool feeling to just not have to do something for somebody. Of course, I'll still be working for my wife. And speaking of that, here's the next project. I'm working on that tire right now for the back tire on that one Ferguson tractor. And by the way, we have a video clip that we're going to show you on that in just a moment. But as soon as I'm done with that, well, then I'm going to jump on the stump removal. I'm going to have to put the backhoe on my Bobcat. And by the way, the backhoe is the backhoe that I rebuilt to fit this Bobcat, because the backhoe is designed for a much smaller Bobcat. And I called Bobcat themselves at the store, and I said, is it possible to, is there some kind of a conversion for this backhoe that would fit my Bobcat? And they said, no, it's impossible. You can't do it. Challenge accepted. So I rebuilt the backhoe to fit my Bobcat, and it works great. It's probably a little overpowered because my new Bobcat's so much bigger, but if you learn how to operate it, it works just fine. You have to turn your RPMs down a little bit, and you have to be sure you're always working two levers at the same time so that you're not throwing so much power in one lever, Anyway, it works, and I'm real happy with it, so I'm going to use that, and I'll have some video on me digging stumps out up in the front yard. Then I'm going to get on her horse trailer and finish that up, I hope, and then I'm going to go to the bay window. After the bay window, I'll probably start on the pond and the water wheel. So the pond, there's kind of two projects there at the pond. One is the water wheel, and the other one is rerouting where the water exits the pond. So I've got two things to do there. I'm not positive which one of those two I'm going to do first, because I have to think through it on, sometimes order of operations is important, and this may be one of those situations. Looks like we got 80 viewers already. So, I mentioned the current projects I'm working on. So let's first start with all the stickered lumber. Here's a little short video clip that I think you'll like to see. Thought I'd give you a look inside the big metal barn here. This is the wood that Alex and I sawed up, or at least most of this is what Alex and I sawed up right in here and way over there. This is wood that I had sawn up previously. We've got oak and walnut, more walnut and probably some oak mixed in all this here too. Then more walnut down below, and then here's posts that I've sawed up. I think there's 18 posts total. These are out of cedar. And then of course these are big walnut slabs over here as well. So we got a lot of stuff sawed up. That old sawmill has done its job pretty well. Well, we've now got all the mess cleaned up. These are just kind of like scrap boards that are here. This one would be a good board, except that the sawmill, the blade got loose and it wandered, so that board there is kind of messed up. But the rest of these turned out really good. Here's a couple of oak boards that were in the greenhouse drying. I just set them down here because I may have a use for those coming up pretty soon. Here's all the cedar wood that I got. That's quite a bit. Now this doesn't include all the posts. There are 2 posts sitting up on top, but you saw the other posts in that other stack, and there's even a few posts down in the barn, so we haven't shown you all the posts. But I think there's over 80 2x4s and quite a few 2x6s in there too, and a few 1xs as well. So there's quite a bit of lumber there out of those small cedar logs. And in addition to that, there is still some lumber stacked in the greenhouse drying. Right now, I think the only thing that's in there is elm, which is what I'm planning to put on the floor of her horse trailer. It's a 2-inch thick elm. And some people say, well, elm, it rots really easy, you know, that kind of thing. And because they see all the dead trees. But, you know, if you ever looked at that elm in that form, it's harder than a brickbat. It's not usually rotted so much as it is just dead. Now, it will rot over time, of course, and the limbs fall off of it. And so I think that's where people get that. But if you dry it properly and everything, I've heard it's very good wood. In fact, elm has a history of being the wagon wheel hubs. Elm does not split easy at all. And the wheel hub on the wagons, you know, the old wooden wagon wheels, where the spokes would go into, that hub was often made out of something like elm because it doesn't split. And it would take a lot of abuse. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a good choice for the floor in her horse trailer. Mainly it was available, and so I thought I'd try it. And, you know, if it doesn't hold up, hey, I got a sawmill, I'll make something else. It's not that big a deal. But I think I'm going to treat it with a spar varnish before I put it down. And then, of course, then there's going to be a rubber mat over the top of it. So it's going to be more or less protected anyway. So I think it'll work. Let's see. I've got another little short video clip here on another project I did just yesterday. Take a look at this. Well, my friends, that's how you break down a big tire. You use big equipment. Now that the tire is broke loose from the rim, now comes the job of getting the tire completely off the rim. And this can be a major task. Well, that's step number one. We've got it. The tire is now moved on the outside of the rim. Now we should be able to gather up the inner tube and pull it out. I've got there was a little keeper on the inner tube. I've got that little keeper off. Now let's see if I can drive the inner tube back through. There, it went through, no problem. And now I have to get this up. I think I'll just use the winch and hold this tire up. I got it out and it's still full of water. Oh my gosh, that was fun. That wasn't easy by any stretch, but you can see I won. Well, there's always something to do. My wife is in town as we speak, and she's trying to find a tube for that tractor tire. I went to a farm supply store yesterday, and the world must be coming to an end because they didn't have any tractor tire inner tubes in the farm store. That kind of blew me away. That it's Orsolin's. If you know what Orsolin's is, I don't know how big of a chain they are. They're all over Missouri, I know. And I thought if anybody would have a tube for that tractor, it would be Orsolin's. They didn't have a single tractor tire tube in the store. I was so let down. To me, the world's got to be ending very soon because of that. Anyway, moving right along. Looks like we've got quite a few questions from yesterday's video, and we'll get into those. Some of them are pretty good questions. I'm going to take a little bit of time and thought here to talk about them. And I can see all kinds of questions scrolling up in the comments section over here. And I just will remind you, if you're new to the channel here and you don't know, you need to put question marks in front of your question. That way I can see it easier, because I'm a very poor reader. And I need to see those question marks, and that way it draws my attention to your question. I don't intentionally miss anyone's question, so if I've missed your question in the past, it is totally by accident, or we were just out of time and I was ending the vlog or whatever. Excuse me. By the way, I didn't sleep much last night. The hands were throbbing. I mean, literally throbbing, woke me up. I started going to another doctor about this. Yeah. You know, and before everybody sends me all their remedies and their cures, please let me explain that I'm not even trying to fix it at this point, other than I am going to another doctor just because my wife wanted me to, more or less. And it just so happens he's a viewer of the channel, and he's got a vested interest. He wants to see it fixed. So I'm hoping he can do something, but the truth is I'm not expecting anything. And I have already tried well over 100 products, well over that. And every cream you can think of, I've tried. Everything that, you know, including all the CDB stuff or CBD, whatever it's called. I don't know. I've tried several of those, like 3 different ones, if not more. And I've tried it all. So please don't make any suggestions. It's not, you know, there are, what I think in this life, you have to realize there are things you can change and things you cannot change. I'm pretty sure this falls into the latter. Anyway, and I haven't found a single thing that gives any relief at all. Not one single thing. So, there you go. I've pretty much given up on it. Moving on to the first question is, it's from IRS Staff 6. I see that username all the time, and very curious about that username. Like, what does that mean? Um, does it mean he's on the IRS staff? That's what it looks like, but I don't know. Anyway, is the liquid filling the tractor tires just water and antifreeze, or is it something else? Typically, it's calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is incredibly corrosive and salty and that type of thing. And it eats those rims up if it leaks and turns them to just crud. And that's kind of the way that rim is. Although the liquid in this one doesn't seem to be calcium chloride. We can't really tell what it is. Tim and I were both looking at that, and we both tasted it. You know, that kind of a test, because it usually should taste salty, and we couldn't detect anything. It just was, there was no taste at all. And you're talking about somebody who is a taster. I can taste just about anything, and I could barely taste anything in that. So I don't know what it is. But I'm probably going to replace it with windshield washer fluid. The reason I'm going to do that is because, number one, it's available. It's not so corrosive, and it won't freeze. But the reason they typically use something like calcium chloride is that it's actually a lot heavier, too. I'm not too worried about that much difference in the weight. Just water in there alone would be very heavy, and that's heavy enough for my purposes. So I'm just going to put windshield washer fluid back in there probably, even though that's kind of expensive, but everything's expensive these days. The next question is from Steve. Good morning, Jerry. Just a question on your vlog 248. You introduced Tim and Joan as guests. Later, you played a video of a song you did at your Tuesday night jam. Do you know the name of the song? If so, please. I got to click a read me more here. Please let me know or email it back to me. Well, we did a total of 4 songs on that video clip. I don't recall the names right off of the ones that that Tim did, but the 2 that I did, the first one was Rock, Salt, and Nails. Tony Rice has a real good version of that out there, Rock, Salt, and Nails. And the second one I did was an original song that I wrote, and I call it The Wedding Band. It's about the people that lived back in my valley. I just made up a story about because of all the things I found. I made up a story about because I found her wedding ring in the spring, and so I just kind of made up a story that went with all that. I found a lot of Civil War relics and all that good stuff. Anyway, that's so hopefully that helps you, Steve. Paul Akers. He says, sorry, I meant to say nut files. Okay. Yeah, he said fret files. Oh, I see down below he's got a question. Can you show your fret files and discuss the different sizes in each, please? Okay, yeah. So the nut files here are string groove files, whatever you want to call them. These are just the Stu Mac ones. There's nothing super special about them. They come in different sizes. My sizes that I have in my hand right here range from 16 thousandths up to 56 thousandths. I like to have them about 2 thousandths bigger than the string. That's the important thing. Now, that one there's only 56, and a lot of your medium strings are 56. So what I do is wallow it out a little bit. I don't make it perfectly tight. I like to wallow it out and actually make the groove a little bigger than the string. And you might say, well, why? Because the buzz out there, if you go out on the forums and all these places, they want them tight and all this. I'm telling you, that's not what you want. When you get them tight like that, they get pinched between the grooves. I'm sure a lot of you have been tightening your strings and you hear it go zip, and it kind of like jumps. When it does that, your strings are pinched in your grooves, and you don't want that. It's just not good. I'm telling you, it's not a good thing. And also your string, when it's pinched like that, when the groove is too tight, your string may not even be riding in the bottom of the nut in that slot. And you want it riding on the bottom of the slot. And why is that? Again, sound transfer. You want good contact. Typically, your nut end of your peg head end doesn't affect your sound all that much, but it can affect it negatively a couple of ways. Number one is if you're not getting good contact, you're not getting that full transfer into your neck and into your body. You're also if you're pinched in there like that, you could be pinched in the middle, and the front edge could be loose, and that front edge could be vibrating and rattling. Also, if you're on the bottom and the groove isn't cut perfectly, you can be riding high in the middle of that groove if it's not a perfect angle cut, and riding high in the middle, and you'll be vibrating on the back edge also. So there's ways that your nut can negatively affect your sound if you don't do what I'm telling you here. And you definitely do not want your string groove as tight as your string is. You want your string groove a little bit loose. A couple thousandths, you couldn't even see it if you tried to see it. A couple thousandths is very, very minimal, but you want it a couple thousandths actually bigger than your string. You don't need it 20 thousandths bigger, but you need it a couple of thousandths bigger. And wallowing it out will help you do that. So hopefully, Paul, that helps you there. They're nothing special. These, I just got them from Stu Mac, and you can buy them in a set. But like if you want to buy them individually, then I would look at this gauge strings you're got, and I would buy them at about 2 thousandths bigger than each of your strings. That's my suggestion, and I'm going to stick to that. Let's see. The next question looks like, let me see here. Did I skip one? I think I did. Mike Saba. Jerry, how do you put the liquid back in the tire? That's the $1 million question right there. Yeah, it ain't easy. That's the really hard thing. And what I have done in the past is I just, slide a tube up over the valve stem, something that fits it tight, and then bring the tube up and put a funnel on that, and then literally pour the liquid in the funnel and let it just drain down in there. I have also used a pump-up sprayer and to put pressure, but the problem is, no matter what you do, it creates air pressure or pressure inside the tube. As things are going in, it's creating a pressure, and it stops going in. So you have to periodically open it up or let it vent or whatever. It's a real nightmare. It's a pain. I mean, it is a major pain. Trust me. It's like I said, if you haven't done it, you haven't lived, because it's a real pain in the neck. I'm telling you. It'll let you know you're alive. Let's say it that way. Anyway, Ranjrog, Ranjrog. Any chance you might be willing to still do a setup or a guitar or someone staying at the rental retreat? Or did I mess up and wait too long to come and see you? At the moment, I'm retired. I'm just going to say it that way, because the hands are killing me. I mean, they're just killing me. And at the moment, I'm retired. If that changes, I will let you know. If this particular doctor can really help me, and, or if we find some miracle cure, or if just somehow it reverses on its own. I don't know. I don't expect any miracles. But if it happens, then I'll let everybody know, and I would be willing to do that. But right now, I'm saying I'm retired from it. I hate to be that firm on it, because I would love to do that. I would love to have people come here, stay, and let me work on the instruments, but I can't guarantee that the day you come and that you bring in your instrument that I could do it, because these hands are not in any good shape at all. They were literally throbbing last night, just like have you ever like smashed your hand and then you could feel it throb and throb, and you have to hold it above your heart to keep it from throbbing so much, or cut it or something and you get that throbbing? That's what was happening, but it was throbbing pain in here. It was just in both hands, actually. And that went on for a couple hours. And then finally, I just fell back to sleep. And then the darn bursitis that I have in my shoulders, I have that quite a bit. And that hit right afterwards. And then that didn't last that long. That usually only lasts 10 minutes. But it was a rough night. Anyway, moving on. Chip Wood, I've seen his username for years and years also. Do you have any ash trees on your property? And if so, have you had issues with ash borer insects? Well, I think the ash trees are pretty much in trouble all over the whole United States, as far as I know. I know that a lot of the ash trees have died out. We do have a rare couple around here, but I mean, they're rare. You hardly ever see one. And yeah, pretty much the insects have hurt a lot of them. I don't recall actually seeing any on my property, but there are a couple down along the road that I have seen. I do know what an ash tree looks like. And in fact, ash trees, I don't know why I liked them so much as a kid, but I just thought I guess it was because my dad said, well, that's what they make baseball bats out of, is ash trees. And that's true to a large extent. They did use it at least at one time. I don't know if they still do. Mike Bennett just gave us a super chat. Thank you so very much, Mike. I really do appreciate it, and I mean that. Clyde Lewis. Sue sure did a great job getting everything moved and cleaned up. I was wondering how you would set the bridge height on a movable bridge on an archtop guitar. Do you use the straight edge along the fingerboard to the bridge like you do on a flat top? Thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying a well-deserved retirement. Well, Clyde, yeah, when you first said it, I thought, well, I just set that by setting the action. But I guess you're talking about like your neck is not on your guitar and you're trying to set the angle of your neck to your guitar. Yeah, then in a case like that, it's kind of hard to rig up because that bridge flops around and moves and stuff. You probably have to tape your bridge down or something like that. But yeah, I pretty much do it the same way. Yeah, and the thing about the archtop is that, you probably want to do it with your bridge. I would think that the best way is to do it with your bridge down low. I don't set a lot of necks on a lot of archtop guitars. I mean, I've done it a time or two. I know I have. But I think you would probably want to have your bridge down pretty low, like have it adjusted fairly low, because you don't want to try to set it with it all the way up, because if you get it off a little bit, then you can't raise it anymore. You know what I'm saying? And besides that, at a certain point, there's a diminishing point of return, or a point of diminishing return, I should say, whenever you get it too high anyway. It starts to sound like you're playing in a barrel. So I would recommend that you have your bridge adjusted fairly low, maybe not all the way bottomed out, but pretty low, and then try to set it to that. Moving on. When you retire, will you still do shop talk videos? Yes, I've said that a couple times. I'm going to continue doing videos. I'm going to continue, at the moment at least, I'm going to continue doing my daily vlog. It's just that they're going to be about projects here on the farm, or just whatever I'm doing that day. I also still do plan to try to build a dobro. I still do plan to work on my own instruments a little bit here and there. And my very close friends, especially people in my band, if they have a problem, I'm sure I'll work on their instrument. But I'm just not going to do it for hire, if you will. I'm done with that. That part's past, at least for now, unless some miracle thing happens. But yeah, the videos are going to continue. I'm going to, still do a weekly video of some larger project, whatever, I don't know if it'll be an hour video or a 30-minute video, but somewhere in there, a 30-minute to an hour video, probably every week still. And there's no telling what it'll be about. I'm probably going to add the word homestead to my Rosa String Works because that's going to be more accurate. It's going to be the Rosa String Works homestead channel, about more homesteading type projects. Let's see. Tim Paul also asked, he has a second question, how do you sharpen your wood scrapers that you used for making instruments? Well, I do have a different technique than most people have on scrapers. Let me see if I can find one of my scrapers. Yeah. You can see this scraper has been sharpened a lot. This used to be perfectly round and probably, and this used to be a lot wider. I'm going to say it was probably that wide, a 1/4 inch wider. It's probably been a 1/4 inch sharpened off of this. This is just one of the 3 or 4 scrapers that come in those packs that you get. This is the one I prefer, the round one. I sharpen it like you sharpen a knife. You basically sharpen one side a lot more than the other side. You barely sharpen the other side at all. In fact, on this, I don't sharpen the other side. I only sharpen one side. And then I just basically hone the other edge just a little bit just to make sure there's no burr bent over. So that, in other words, I get it good and flat. So I get it just as sharp as I can absolutely get it that way. And I even work it on leather and everything and just get it shaving hair sharp. And then I just take my burnishing tool and I bend that edge over. And the bevel's on this side, so you can see the bevel, and I just take the burnishing thing and bend that edge over, bend it over like that. Yeah, I don't bend it back this way. The edge gets kind of brittle and will break that way. So you want to bend it this way. Okay? So that's how I do it. And I learned that from a violin maker, a very reputable violin maker in the St. Louis area, when I very first started. In fact, I would say even been doing it that way since my very first mandolin. If you do it really well. Now, I will tell you that this edge, when you do it this way, won't last as long as the way that your typical cabinet maker scrapers are sharpened. In other words, they just sharpen them 90 degrees, just perfectly 90 degrees, and then they take the burnishing tool and burnish both edges, and so they burnish a little bit, but those are not nearly as sharp as this is either when it comes to scraping. And if you want to get a really smooth, violin smooth type scrape, this is what'll do it. But everybody's different, and if you want to sharpen them the other way, like your traditional cabinet scraper, feel free, knock yourself out. It's okay with me. That's just how I learned to do it, and I like doing it that way, and it works really well. Like I said, it won't last as long, but it'll last a couple of instruments if you're careful. It works pretty good. Moving on. Aletha Chris. And I think she might have told me how to pronounce that name, and I'm probably screwing it up. I can't remember now. Chris is the way I'm going to say it today anyway. She says, Sue is quite the equipment contractor. Well, her and I go round and around about this equipment thing. I always say she's a driver. She's not an operator. An operator pretty much manages the whole piece of equipment. They can tell when something's going to break, or, they know when they're pushing it too hard, all that kind of thing. That's an operator. A driver pretty much drives it. She's a driver, in my opinion. But she's a pretty good driver. She does a pretty good job. It's just that she's not much on the maintenance part, and she's not much on knowing when something's about to break. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, that's what keeps me busy around here. She goes on to ask, what did your Thursday shirt say? And I think that was the one that's was the sad face, and I think his sawhorses broke in half, and it was said something like all day long, that type of thing. It was like, you got some kind of problem all day long. That's pretty much my life. um, she goes on to say that she has our shirts and their favorite garments. Thank you. We love the music video. That guy really knows his business on his instruments and singing. See you at the Friday show. Oh, and Tom is working on a wheel for me, too. We feel your pain. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, there's... I assume you're talking about the tractor wheels there, tractor tires, or were you thinking about the water wheel? But either way, it's pain. There's a lot to do. Moving on. Hal Millett. Jerry, I've got a neighbor's dreadnought guitar with a broken neck that they want me to repair. Too much damage to just reconnect and glue. My question is, what is the best way to hold the neck to cut out for the right angle horizontal to the fretboard? Do you use a jig to hold it at the right angle to the bandsaw? Also, same for the headstock. I have to make a piece of wood cut to reconnect headstock to neck fretboard. Well, Hal, I'm not exactly sure on that. I just have a pattern, and I trace the pattern on my block of wood, and then I just cut it out to that. So it's freehand cut, and then I just sand it smooth and call it good enough, pretty much. And as far as the right angle goes, I just get it as close as I can get it, pretty much. I just use the pattern really and just saw it. I don't have any particular jigs on a guitar like that. Now I do have a little jig neck I'll show that came from Roger Seminoff in his book, and I'm pointing up there because that's where those books, I can't, it's backwards in the darn camera. But anyway, those books up there, Roger Seminoff book, he did make a jig for holding the neck on a mandolin, and I can run over and get that jig real quick, and I'll show that to you here just in a moment. So this is just a little jig that we use for the mandolin necks, and it's got a little trough in here where the round part of the neck fits right on here. This here is where, like, I cut this out because of mine have that little V thing coming down right there. And then this is where the actual peg head sits, and you can put a spring clamp on here and hold the peg head down. You can put a spring clamp on here and hold like where the fingerboard would be, although the fingerboard's not on there at this point in time, and you would clamp down right there and clamp down right here. And what the purpose of this jig is, and this is of course flat here, and the sides are 90 degrees to that flat. You can then cut that decorative shape on the peg head on your bandsaw, and it cuts it at that angle, which is the way mandolin peg heads are cut. There's a long angle on it. And you can see here that this has that long angle coming down. So all of this, instead of being 90, this is cut at an angle on the end down here. Now on the sides, it's 90 because that's just the way it works as you're driving through the bandsaw. But anyway, that jig was for that. I don't recall ever really using a jig for the guitars. So, I just, like what I do is just lay it flat on the you have to turn it upside down, lay it flat on there, and just saw it out. That's how I do it. I don't know. I hope that helps you. Sorry, Hal, if I'm missing your whole point there. Henry Miller. Jerry, now you're in for the second time on the inside joke about retiring. As far as I can tell, you are busier than ever. I don't know if I'm busier than ever, but I'm as busy as I've ever been. I stay busy. I really have always stayed busy. In fact, that new doctor, he goes, boy, I can sure tell you've worked hard. That's what he said. I said, well, if you call starting in the 4th grade and working constantly till now, I'd say you're right, because that's pretty much the way my life has been. I've worked pretty much my whole life since 4th grade. This may sound weird, but I can honestly say that I have never been unemployed a single day in my life since the 4th grade. And that's pretty much the truth. I was, and when I say 4th grade, that's when my dad started making me cut grass. And that's also when I got my job working at Southwestern Bell, was when I was in the 4th grade. And that's the true story, too. I've told that story before. I'm not going to tell it now, but that's the true story. I was asking you about a few weeks ago. He's talking about regarding the Washburn D52 with the lifting bridge. I was asking you about a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, I didn't misspeak when I said how high the bulge was on the top, at least 3/16 of an inch, suggesting it needs to have a bridge reset. Well, you need more than a bridge reset for sure, as the bulge is mostly behind the bridge and bridge plate. Will this adequately address the situation? Perhaps a larger, thicker bridge plate would help. You really need to get, at this point, you need to really make sure that your braces are intact and all that. You need to get your bridge pad out of there probably, and you need to get your bridge off of there. It's hard to get both of those things off at the same time because you can crack your top really easy. Like when you're pulling your bridge pad off, if your bridge is still on there, you're not as likely, although it can still happen, you're not as likely to crack your top. When your bridge is off there, now you're pulling the bridge pad out, you're going to probably break your top. It's pretty hard to do because you're prying so hard on that. And that bridge pad is stuck there pretty hard with glue, and then the wood is so thin on your top that you'll crack your top pretty easily. So your best option would be to try to remove the bridge pad before you take your bridge off. Then you got to take your bridge off very carefully so that you don't break your top because you don't have your bridge pad to help support the top again. It's a risky situation either way you go, and likely as not, you'll probably end up cracking your top a little bit. But if you're careful, even if you do crack it, you should be able to glue it back and make that hold just fine. But you got a big job there. If it's seriously bowed up 3/16 of an inch, yeah, you need to do a lot of work there. I would, if you're successful getting the bridge and the bridge pad out, then I would probably maybe even dampen the whole thing down wherever there's bare wood on the inside and on the bridge area, and dampen it down, and then clamp it between two flat boards, and maybe leave it that way and let it dry out that way for several days. That might be the first step. Then the second step would be, like you said, put in a real nice bridge pad that would, I don't like to make it sound like you want to put in some monstrosity. That's not what you want to do, because you're just going to kill your sound if you do that. But you want to put in a real high quality bridge pad. You want to put in something like a quarter sawed Paduke or quarter sawed rosewood or something like that. And you want to make sure that it covers every bit of the original area and probably about a 1/4 inch outside of the original area, at least that much more, if not a little bit more than that. Because you're not going to fix your problem if you don't. And then again, when you're gluing that in there, you're going to want to make sure you got a good flat support on the top of your guitar and a good big caul on the inside so that you can squeeze it together and keep it pancake flat as you're gluing it up. Once you get that done, you'll probably be on your road to success and get your bridge glued back on there. And again, use lots of cauls and keep everything flat. So yeah, Henry, you got your work cut out for you there, buddy. I've been there, done that, and it's not easy to do, but you can do it. For the people who think you can just steam that stuff into position submission, you probably can, but it's going to last about a month, and it's going to pull right back where it was. So that kind of fixing never works on that kind of thing. You need to fix it mechanically, and it needs to be a permanent fix. Otherwise, it's just going to pull right back where it was. How do I know? Trust me, I know. James Akers. Hi, Jerry. I have a question. Do you use molds for your guitar, mandolin sides and backs, and assembling them? And did you build your own molds? Well, James, I pulled the molds out here because you asked that question. I had read it ahead of time. Let me first show you the Roger Siminoff mold that I use on the mandolins. Now, this is pretty much straight out of his first book. And it's got these adjustable things here. What this is for, what this block is for, is so that you can put a clamp in here, and like you got your neck block in here, and your sides are glued to your neck block, and this way you can clamp the neck block, with a big C-clamp. And the same way down here, you can clamp your tail block to this block right here. This mold comes apart. That's why all this rig is on here. So that way, if you get your sides in there and get them all glued up with your blocks and everything, you can get them out easy because this mold does come apart. Well, I found I never did take the stupid mold apart ever. I mean, I just slid my sides out. I made them, I guess, well enough that I didn't have to worry about them sticking inside there. And so now that was based on his pattern back in the Roger Siminoff book. And that's the pattern I used for my first, I think, 2 mandolins, something like that. But then, and maybe more than that now that I think about it, it was probably several mandolins. But anyway, then later, after I took my Uncle Don's apart, well, then I built this mold to match the Lloyd Loar. And so this mold matches the Lloyd Loar much closer. Oh, in fact, it matches it, as far as I know, exactly, with the exception now that I've also cut out this little spot here where I put that extra body point in on my last mandolin. But you can see this one doesn't come apart, but I didn't feel I needed it to come apart, and I've built a lot of mandolins with this mold here. I don't even know how many, but a lot of mandolins with this mold. And you can see here that you just tighten these up. You can just tighten these or loosen them. And I'm loosening them in this case. And you can pull this out, see? And that's what spreads your sides out to your mold there. It works really good. It just works really good. So again, this is inspired by Roger Siminoff, but then I just modified it to work the way I like to work. This mold here, I don't remember. I know the book's up there, but I don't remember what it's called. It's some book that I used when I first started building guitars. And this one's a dreadnought shape here. I actually made this mold off of Henry. I forget the guy's name. He was killed in a car wreck. But anyway, it was Walt and Gene Henry's son's guitar. And I just traced it, and that's the dreadnought guitar that I build all mine off of. And I cut out the back of this because a lot of times I'll put in little extra wooden braces across here, just temporary. They're just spreaders, if you will. I just force them into place, and that keeps the sides pushed out to the edges. And then maybe I'll have the top glued on. And if you're wondering why I have all these nails around there, well, that's for the rubber band. When I go from one side to the other, I can go back and forth and wrap it under those nails, and that rubber band holds the top down to the sides then. But these blocks on the ends, because the sides are taller than this mold, these blocks on the ends keep where the ends come together, where the two side ends come together, that keeps from breaking this. In other words, if you don't have this and the end just stops there high, you can just touch it and actually crack your side. So I put these extensions on here so that, you know, the full end is supported and it won't crack right there, because those ends can crack very easy, because you're talking quarter sawed, very thin wood, and if you just bump it, it'll bust it. So that's why I put these little blocks on there. Plus, it gives you something to glue to too whenever you put in your neck block or your tail block. It gives you more to clamp to. Well, I hope that helps you there. That's, and if you can't tell, this is multiple layers of MDF. So, in other words, you just got to cut out a whole bunch of different layers of MDF and glue it together. You can see the glue seams there. Okay, moving on. Zappa asks, what kind of fluid are you going to put in the tractor tires? Well, I've kind of already addressed that by accident when I was talking about that earlier. But anyway, I'm going to probably put back in windshield washer fluid is probably what I'll put in. And I think that's it. So now we'll move over to today's questions that were in the comment section. We have 152 viewers at the moment, or at least if you can trust that counter. That's how many we have. Trying to find the first question. I think David Tharp is the first one. Hi, Jerry. Do you use that binding router guide from StuMac that fits the Dremel tool? If so, what do you think about it? Yes, and I modified it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, here was the original one that they made. And this one sort of works okay. It's a little bit offset so that the one side is a little deeper than the other side. And you put your cutter in there, and then you hold this along, and you go around your edge of your mandolin, and it cuts that slot. This one was sort of okay. In fact, it works pretty good, but you only get one size with it, and it's not adjustable. This is the more modern one, and it is adjustable. And they had a little bitty short thing on here, I think. Anyway, I modified mine and put a much longer deal on here, and I made this on my metal lathe, and I don't remember if I made other modifications to it or not, but anyway, you can your cutter is coming down through that little hole there, and it sticks out past this, and this gave me more to hold on to and more to keep it flat against the side of the mandolin. So they work pretty good. It's more of a cutter issue than it is this thing. This thing works pretty good, but the cutters themselves, they leave a little bit to be desired. If you could find, good carbide cutters instead of the just high-speed steel, and if you had like you can find them with just two cutters on them, but those are pretty rough, and if you hit and get in the wrong way on your wood, it'll just knock a big chunk out of your wood. If you had, 4 to 6 carbide cutters on there instead of just 2, it would probably do a lot better job and smoother job, and that would be awesome, but I don't know where you'd ever find anything like that. All I can say is you got to be a little careful with them. They work pretty good, though. Moving on to the next one, the Happy Knot. Thoughts on the Magini violin? Well, the truth is I have none. I don't know anything about the Magini or Magini. I always heard it called Maganini, but that's not the way that's spelled there. But anyway, regardless, I don't really know much about them, quite honestly. Uh, I'm sure they're fine, but I don't know really anything that much about them. I just see a comment here that says from Green Rumor, he says elmwood is highly resistant to rot and decay, which makes it an ideal choice for outdoor applications such as fencing, decking. Well, I don't know. I have never really used it that much. I suspect it would be pretty good because even those old dead elm trees that everybody thinks are rotten, they're harder than a brickbat when you go up to them. Now, they do rot and they do the next, I mean, like that's why the limbs will break off, and stuff like that. But my suspicion is if you take care of it and you do it right, it'll probably be very strong and last very long. Like I said, they used them for wheel hubs, and they've lasted forever. Moving on, Paul Walton, P-A-W Walton says, the quarter sawn woods for making instruments sound good to me. Will you also sell matching sides and pick out some top or neck materials? I would probably sell the sides and the backs as a pair or as a group together, or they could be sold separately also. I probably won't get into the tops because, first of all, I'm only going to sell the woods that are cut here on the farm, and the top wood, you'd have to import that from somewhere else, and I don't have any good wood that I would use for a top here. I mean, technically, you could use the red cedar for a top, but first of all, you got to find a piece that's not free, and that's pretty hard to do. And, and secondly, I still think it's a inferior wood to spruce or redwood or western cedar compared to red cedar, eastern red cedar. Though I think if you found the right piece of eastern red cedar, you could make a very nice instrument out of it. I really do think you could, but I couldn't find enough of it to make it worth my effort. David Tharp asks another question. Would you consider standing over someone's shoulder and guiding them as they try and set up their own instrument while staying at the retreat? Yeah, David, I would definitely do that. Yeah, if now that you brought that up, I got a couple of spinning things up here in my brain. Yeah, I mean, if people want to come here and have me consult with them or show them how to do something, I'm totally all in on all of that. And would I even lay hands on their instrument? Probably, but I'm not, I just don't want to set myself up for failure with these dang hands. I would assist whatever I could help with. One more thing, and this is starting to take off. This will be the second one that I'm doing, and that is Zoom calls. So if you would like to arrange a Zoom call with me, we can do that, and I would be available, and like you could have your project there, just like we're talking right now. You could be on the other side. I could see you, and you could hold up your instrument on the Zoom call, and you could ask your questions, and I could tell you what to do. So I'm doing those at $100 per hour. So in other words, a 15-minute call would be about $25. You can talk and get a lot said in 15 minutes, and I don't watch the clock that close. So, I mean, if it goes 20 minutes, I'm not going to cry about that. So, my point is we could work out Zoom calls if you want to do some consulting that way or something like that as well. But good question, David. Thank you for asking that. Lisa Ring, upright bass repair question. I saw a video you did. Sorry, I got something in my chest today. Probably allergies. I saw a video you did, upright bass neck reset. Can I call on your business phone to ask a couple of detailed questions? I am with Blueberry Lane Guitars. Well, Lisa, my suggestion would be to do the Zoom call that we just mentioned. I think that would be the best option, and I could look at it and see what you're dealing with and tell you exactly how I would fix it. So if you're interested in something like that, let me know. And you can if you to get this process started, the best way to start it would probably be to send me an email. Now, don't expect an immediate response on the email. I'll get back to you within a day or two, though. I just get so far behind, and I get so many emails. It's unbelievable how many I get. So, don't feel like you're not going to hear from me if you don't hear from me in the 5 minutes after you send the email. But I will get back to you. rosastringworks@gmail.com, by the way, is the email. Tanya Lewis, I sneaked in. Oh, sorry, that's just the next person. That's not a question. Sorry. Looks like Carolyn Fike. I'm noticing there's a lot more women watching lately. I mean, really, over the last couple of months, there's a lot more women's names in the comments. I'm amazed. Caroline Fike, have you ever considered teaching the luthier skills? Well, I've got 93,000 plus students. Now, you would be surprised, Caroline, how many. It's got to be in the thousands by now, how many emails I've received. Thank you so much. I've learned so much from watching your videos. I just wanted to say thank you for teaching me how to do XYZ. Thousands upon. I really believe that I've received well over 1,000 of those emails by now. And and I did have my apprentice here in the shop. His name is Caleb Mills, and he's on YouTube as Caleb Mills Guitars. And I have been referring lots of people to him lately, and I'm sending, like, whenever somebody sends me an email and they say, can you work on my guitar? I say, I'm retired, but I'm referring my business or my work to Caleb. And I CC Caleb on the email, so he's getting notified whenever you ask about a repair also. But you can look him up on YouTube, Caleb Mills Guitars. He's a good kid. He's really just a good person. I mean, he really is. So you can't go wrong with going to Caleb. So let's see. Mike Saba. And by the way, Carolyn, if, again, this would be an application teaching the luthier skills where we could do the Zoom thing too. Or you could come here and stay at my rental retreat, and we could do it face-to-face right here on the bench if you wanted to do that too. It's going to run you some money. I mean, I'm not doing it for free because I got a lot to do. So anyway, but I'm not greedy, and I'm not trying to get every dollar out of every person every minute. That's not me. That's not what I'm about. Bob Taylor, I have a Taylor acoustic that from the factory, the tuning machine holes were drilled larger than the ferrules. Is this a problem? If so, how do you fix it? Well, I don't like it when the ferrules are loose like that. It depends how loose they are. If they're just slightly loose and they're, like you can sort of feel a little bit of friction as they're going in, but yet they fall out, I would probably just use a glue around the ferrule and put them back in. And the glue I would probably use would be I'd probably just use this canopy glue for that, and I have used it, and it seems to work. The canopy glue holds non-wood things to wood pretty well. It holds plastic and metal to wood fairly well. It's not like the strongest bond in the world on the metal. So if you ever had to take them out, I don't think it'd be any problem getting them out. But on the other hand, they'll stay in. I don't like them when they fall out, that's for sure. And if they're really sloppy, then that's not good either, because if they're really sloppy, your strings are pulling on that ferrule, and it's putting tension on your tuning key, which is not good, and it's gonna it potentially wallow out the hole where where your tuner goes up through there. So if it's really sloppy loose like that, then I would somehow shim it. Either with paper, which is not the best choice in the world, like a card paper or something like that, or like a business card type paper, something like that that's a little thicker, and that you could shim it with that and tighten up that hole, because I definitely would want it tight. I don't like them loose like that at all, especially when they're sloppy loose. You got to do something. I mean, I typically, if I'm going to do it, but it's a lot of work, is I just fill the hole and then re-drill it and redo it, but that's a lot of work, but that's how I do it. But for your average person doing it, probably something like a business card shim would probably be the better way to go. But you'd want to make it fit up really good and fit really tight and all that, and do dry fitting before you glue it in place, that kind of thing. I think this might have scrolled. I think it did. Wow, it scrolled a lot, I guess. Okay, I think I found where I'm at. I think I'm, yeah, it must have moved. I missed this one here. Mike Saba, are you still going to make your antler saddles? If so, do you want us to send you deer antler? Well, at the moment, Mike, I am still making the antler saddles and still selling them. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to go yet, but for right now and for the foreseeable future, I could still use your deer antler. And if it turns out that I sell off that part of the business to someone else, and namely that someone else might be Caleb, because he's already expressed interest in it, and I would give him first shot, I think. Then if that happens, then whatever deer antler I have will go with it at that time. And so, yeah, I can use your deer antler, and I'm sure if I do sell that off, and I'm not saying I will or I won't, it's just something to consider. Yeah, I would just give the antler then to whoever the next person in line is. Moving on, Bob Taylor. I have a Taylor acoustic that from the factory, that's the one we talked about. That's where it skipped to earlier. Sorry. Matt Tommen, Mr. Rose, why is the top of a guitar called the top and not the front? Well, we briefly discussed this the last time, and I said, well, that's just something for you to ponder on. And I kind of mean that. I mean, it's just, you can call it whatever you want, that's just the way people call it. That's all I know about that. Carolyn Fike says, thanks, Jerry. That sounds great. Okay, well, good. Moving down, we're about out of things here. We are an hour into this, by the way, and it looks like we're just about out of questions. So if you do have a last-minute question, you better get it in there. Looks like the Dark Link 623. What horsepower motor is on your bandsaw? Is 1.75 enough? No, I do not think so at all. I've got an 18 horse, so it's a much bigger engine. That's an 18 horse on my bandsaw sawmill, if that's what you're talking about, which I think it is. It's an 18 horse, and it's got a electric start on it. And that motor, now keep in mind, I bought it whenever I built the sawmill, which I'm thinking is 5 or 6 years ago now. And it was only like $319. It's one of those Chinese type knockoff motors, but I'm telling you what, that little sucker is an awesome motor. I mean, you go up to the starter, touch it, and it starts. You don't have to fiddle with it. You don't have to, it's knock on wood, it's been one of the best motors I've ever owned. I've got a Honda generator, a Honda power washer motor, and it's a real good motor too. But I'd say the one I've got on my sawmill, even though it's just a Chinese knockoff, I'd say it's just as good. Really, it's a great motor. So you can get them pretty cheap. But mine's 18 horse, and I think you need pretty much about every bit of that. You could probably get by with a little less, maybe a 12 horse or something. You'd probably be fine. But I think you want a little more is better when it comes to something like a sawmill like that. Paul Walton, have you considered creating playlists on your channel that would string this specific related instrument? Yeah, I really have, Paul. And I actually started a library thing a while back, and I got sidetracked. I had so much work I couldn't keep up with it. I wanted to build a library of videos that actually I could sell, and you could just buy the whole library and then look it up by subject. And I would love to do that. I don't know if I'll ever get that done. It's a lot of work. I mean, it really is a lot of work. But it's something to consider. And it's, if after I get a lot of these projects behind me, that may be something I'll work on, But boy, I got a lot of work right now, and probably always will, if I'm being truthful. The Dark Link 623. I meant the Grizzly bandsaw behind you. Oh, the Grizzly saw inside here. Oh, that one's a 2 horsepower, I think. Yeah, electric. When it comes to an electric bandsaw, that's a different thing. Yeah, it's a 2 horsepower. So it is a 2 horsepower electric motor, and that particular motor runs on either 110 voltage or 220 voltage or 240, whatever you want to call it. Everybody calls it something different. But anyway, you can run it on the 120 or 240. Right now I have it running on 120. I used to have it running on 240. When I moved it down here, I didn't have a 240 electrical outlet, so I ran it on 110. I rewired it back to 110. And I never did bother to change it because it seems like I have plenty of power on 110. I don't see any reason to run it on the 220. There you go. Yeah, Christina Christia says you need to hire a librarian. Yeah, you're right. With all the videos I have out there, it would be a full-time job for a very long time, cataloging all that. It'd be a real full-time job for several weeks to get that done. Thanks, Jerry. Great shop talk. Try Tiger Bomb on your hands. Hell, I don't know if I remember trying that one or not, but I've tried so many. I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm telling you, they don't work. Nothing works like that. I've tried everything. Not any relief at all. Not that much on any of it. Gordon Shumway says he has a question above. Okay. Yeah, I see your name up there, but I don't see any question marks. Okay, there's the word question, though. I recently acquired a nice 24-inch Asian-made parlor guitar. I cut down the saddle to bring the action down more in line with my electric. Got a nice height, a buzz, but I find the output volume diminished. Is this due to the flatter string break angle over the saddle? Well, it can be, Gordon. In general terms, and most luthiers know this, in general terms, your higher saddle is better. But as I often say again, there's always a point where you get diminishing return. If you get it too high, it's not going to sound great. If you get it too low, it's not going to sound great. But there's a space in there in between where you can be anywhere in there and it's going to sound pretty darn good. And generally, higher is better up to a point. And so, yeah, Gordon, that's probably your problem. It's probably got something to do with that. It can also be, Gordon, it can really be how the saddle is cut. I mean, like, If your saddles, and I'm exaggerating again because I don't know any other way to do this, but you know, I'm saying this is the back of your guitar. This is your tail or your tail pin, tail block area. Your string is coming from your tail like this, or from your pins like this. This is your saddle here. If your saddle angle is like this consistently all the way, it'll probably be fine. But if your saddle gets flat like this, if your saddle top of your saddle is flat, then your string can just get all muted, weird sounding, and it can even vibrate and buzz right there. And you mentioned the buzz, so it could be that. So you want to make sure your saddle has an angle on it, and it should have that full angle, the full length, or the full width of your saddle, and it should be one consistent angle, and it shouldn't have multiple, you know. And I know that most saddles come out from the factory and they're round. The reason they do that is because then there's only one point it can make contact. It's cheap, it's fast, it's easy, but it's not necessarily your best. In my opinion, your best saddle has one continuous angle on it, and it ends right on that front edge. And if you do that, you're fine. And that will get rid of your buzzing, and it will give you your fullest sound, and your sound transfer will be better, everything. I think that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's program, and I do appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you probably on Monday.